I'd like to call this meeting of the Colerain Township Board of Trustees to order. Heather, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Insko?
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Unger?
Here. I'd like to ask for a motion to go into executive session. Do you have that, Larry?
Yes, I recommend that the board make a motion to go into executive session in accordance with Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22 G8 to consider confidential information relating to specific business strategy and to discuss negotiations with other political subdivisions respecting requests for economic development assistance.
I'll make the motion, and I'd also just like to note that there are no audience members here, which is fairly consistent with special meetings.
And I'll second the motion. It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Heather, please call for a vote.
Mr. Insko?
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Unger?
Aye. The board will go into executive session and should return right around the scheduled 7 o'clock meeting start time. Thank you. I'd like to call this meeting of the Colerain Township Board of Trustees back to order. We have returned from executive session.
No action will be taken as a result of executive session. Heather,
Okay.
will you please call the roll for everybody returning?
Sure. Mr. Insko?
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Unger?
Here. I'd like to have you all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I ask you to remain standing for a meditation, and the meditation would be next week. We honor what used to be called a Decoration Day, and now it's Memorial Day, and there's been a lot of folks that have given their lives for our country. So I'd ask you to take a moment and be thankful for those who've made the sacrifice so we can have meetings here in Colerain Township and do all the other things that American citizens can do. May God rest the souls of those who've given their lives for our country.
Amen. Thank you.
And we'll move on to the next item, which is from the fiscal officer.
All right, I'd like to ask for the board's approval of the May 8th, 2018 regular meeting. I'd like to thank Mr. Insko, who provided me with a couple typographical and spelling corrections. So those have been made on the final of the draft.
I'll make the motion to approve those, and then afterwards I'd like to make another motion to amend a previous set from
Okay, well, let's just do one thing at a time.
Perfect.
Okay.
So there's a motion to approve the May 8th minutes, and I will second that motion. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Heather, please call for a vote on the May 8th minutes.
Mr. Insko?
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Unger?
Aye, those minutes are approved. And did you have another item?
Yeah, we had an incident. It was either June or July 2017, where a trustee had kicked out a resident, and I think that should have been in the minutes. It wasn't in the minutes. So if we could add that, I'll have to get the verbiage to you because I don't have it right now. But
Okay.
I'm sure you
So
can
we
probably.
can't motion for that. This is just an item for information.
Well, I think Heather needs two of us to agree to amend the minutes. Is that correct, Heather?
Do you know what the amendment is?
It's to, sorry, somebody speaking out there that I know could probably help me with that right now.
That was a meeting that they weren't at, so it was just to approve the recording of the minutes.
Right.
Do you know which date it was,
June or
Kathy?
July?
It's
wasn't it?
July.
11th, I think.
It's July of 17, yeah.
So you would like us to approve as to form a not you.
Greg's here.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at.
Right. So
Greg, are we
Greg,
sure it's the July 11th, 2017 minutes?
Yes.
Is that okay?
yes. Procedurally, what I might suggest is that, Greg, we can develop some verbiage and,
However it's supposed to.
right,
And put it on
And-
the agenda for the next meeting.
do it at the next meeting.
Fair enough.
So can we just, do we need a motion for that, or since we discussed
We can
it?
table it till the next meeting then.
Well, we need a motion to table then.
Okay, then I'll make the motion to table it until I'll make a motion to table it until the next meeting.
Second.
Been motioned and seconded. Is
We need a vote?
there any discussion?
Okay.
Hearing none, Heather, please call for a vote on the motion to table.
Mr. Insko?
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Unger?
Aye, so that is tabled. And so that takes care of the business of the fiscal officer, because all we did was approve the May 8th minutes. I guess in the past, over the last summers, I don't know that they had citizens address during the second meeting of the month, but this board is very interested in every opportunity we can give our people that live in Colerain Township a chance to be heard from. As we've done in the past, and it's really gone well the last 5 months, just out of respect for your fellow citizens, if everybody could try to limit their presentation to 5 minutes, that would be great. And when I picked these up off the stack, Christine was on the bottom, and she was first. So you're first. Okay, that's fine. So you go first, Christine.
My name is Christine Freiberg, 6613 Thompson. Only thing I would like to address, and I know this is a special meeting, I just wanted to commend the police department for what's happened in regards to Northwest Passage and the whole investigation and how everything was handled. Just to let you know, as a citizen, I 1,000% support our police department. I thought they handled everything professionally, and their investigative process was expeditiously. I cannot find any other good adjectives right now to describe this. Secondly, I'd like to address the Mega Land, the playground. My kids are teenagers, though, but it's been brought up on Facebook that it's in bad shape. And when Mega Land, if I recall when it was first built, it was an all-volunteer with materials donated, or at least at a very low cost to have that done. Now, I understand there's probably new regulations regarding playgrounds. Is there anything on the table, or at least a task force to look into making it another volunteer event and getting materials donated in accordance to code, so we can reduce the cost for the township? And that's what makes this community so great, that it was like mega new. I don't want to use mega news, not to be so cliche, but it was. It was mentioned throughout the tri-state how an all-volunteer group made this nice playground for kids to go play in over at Colerain Park, and I like to see that happen again. So if there is a task force, I am interested in that, and I would like to see it become, I would say, all volunteer if it can be, just to reduce the cost for the township. So if anybody has any ideas, I'd be happy to share. I've been on a couple boards back when I was in Butler County. So that's all I have to say.
Perfect, thank you.
Christine,
So we don't have a administrator or a trustees report tonight. So if you want to address residents as
I'd like to. Actually, I'm a big fan of the parks. I spoke to our representative Bill Blessing about that a couple of months ago. Our township missed by December the deadline, get the grants, about $300,000. They missed it. They should have submitted by December, but anyway, they missed it. Then I talked to them again, find other way to find a grants so we can build the park. I think I recall last meeting or meeting before, Kevin, they submitted already a grant. I think we voted on it, and once the grant come through, I think that's our goal, to build that big park. Okay, my heart is there.
Oh, my heart's there too. My kids, when they were little, we used to take our daughter when she was a little kid, and I like to see future generations to enjoy what we did, with my kids. So, and I see parents, people complain on Facebook, and I'm like, wait a minute, this was an all-volunteer. Can we make this an all-volunteer event with donations or even a fundraiser? And I know we're fundraising for the Veterans Memorial, and I don't want to take that away either. So it was just a suggestion that I wanted to
Sure, I'll work on it, seriously.
Okay, thank you very much.
If I can add to that, like Raj said, and Jeff's at a conference, if you guys didn't catch that, and the grant money was denied, so we weren't able to get it. When I was in middle school, we did, I was still in the summer park program, and we did this thing called Pennies for a Playground. And what it was a competition amongst the kids that went to summer camp. and they wanted to see who could collect the most pennies for the playground. And I'm so proud of this, even though I was in middle school, and this is like 20 years ago, I won. Like, I collected more. I went to my neighbors, like all of them. It was awesome. You know, you would show up and just say, hey, I'm here to try to get pennies for the playground. And of course, like, everyone with a soul would come and dump their penny jar or whatever that change they had into my, pillowcase. And I was really proud of that. And you're right, it was all volunteer donations. Everyone got behind it. It was all over the news. And I mean, the name said it all, Mega Land. It was huge. It was a kid's dream. I mean, everything about it was absolutely awesome and amazing. But like, time wears all things. It was made of wood. It wasn't made of the plastics that playgrounds are made of today, and it's kind of served its purpose, its longevity. It was still being stained, I want to say, every summer up until the budgets really got cut. So I'm really excited to make something happen. I just don't know what. But at this point, I think grant money is probably the best way to go because, I don't know what that playground cost to build, but I've seen quotes in excess of $250,000. So I know it makes you cringe when you see those figures. To quickly comment on the Northwest Passage thing that you were asking about, thank you for that, because my God, I could not have spent more time online trying to correct people and the rumors and the fallacies and all these things. And I got death threats. I got 2 legitimate death threats. I don't want to say exactly what those people said to me because I was sticking up for a police department that, in my opinion, did everything right. I have no problem in admonishing and penalizing and suspending whatever if I would have found that to be the case. But I think under the duress and the situation, all things considered, I'm surprised that there wasn't more harsh actions. Honestly, I mean, and I can't imagine being. That's one of those things when you see that, you've really got to thank our officers for what they do, because who in their right mind wants to be in that situation and do that? You know what I mean? There's enough money in the world. Those guys are heroes. And rather than thanking them, there were people, there were, again, death threats. I got them. I know they got them too. But luckily, most of the death threats were unsubstantiated or from people out of state because it went viral. So unfortunately, we attracted crap from out of town, and I'm just so thankful that that's over, and I'll commend the chief again. I'll just pretend like he's standing over there. Good job, chief. For his thorough investigation. I mean, when he released that report, you guys read the report. That report was thorough to to the point where I was getting people saying, Greg, you shouldn't post that. And it's like, well, look, our residents demand transparency. It doesn't get more transparent than that. And the reality is, if people follow the law, we wouldn't have these situations. So thank you for acknowledging that was an unbelievable. I didn't sleep for 2 days. I promise you, that was unbelievable going through that. That was an unbelievable. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
Hold on, Dan. I know you want to move this along, and you're the best at moving things along.
Right.
But I seized the moment. I speak at Colerain High School, and really, actually everywhere. Heaven's Treasure up the street, Macaulay. I'll go anywhere where people will have me. And I happened to be booked that same day, or the day after that happened. So I seized the moment, and I took advantage. I have some really difficult adult conversations with young kids of all ethnicities, and tried to explain to them, guys, look, I know that when you watch the news every night, you see a police officer beating people or whatever, because that's what sells ads. You just have to understand how the world works. Nobody's going to tune into the news night after night to see you get your diploma. Grandma cares about that. I care about that. You should care about that. But the world in general, they want to see the salacious crap that the news spews, and it's just the way it works. But please take it with a grain of salt. There are bad officers. We know that, but they're not all bad. And especially here, I think we've all taken the time to get to know them. They're awesome. We have great officers. Will they make mistakes someday? Maybe, and we'll punish them accordingly. But holy moly. And I told these kids, if you think our officers are the problem, be an officer. Be part of the solution. You know what I mean? We're always hiring. We always need good officers. So those were difficult, very adult, mature conversations, and those kids handled it awesome. And, I made it as lighthearted as possible, and I was really proud of them. So shout out to Colerain High School and those students for listening and being willing and receptive to such a difficult conversation during such a difficult time in the world, coming from me. I might not be the best advocate, but I did my best. So sorry, Dan, keep it moving.
No, that's fine. No, you're fine. Thank you for your comments. Paula Skitt, Jerry Anhalfer, Dan Mecklenburg, Greg Schneider, were the 4 people that got that Megaland started.
Yeah.
5 of us took a ride up to Wilmington to look at the one that was built up there, and that was right at the beginning of my school board career. But that's okay. I want to keep her moving.
It was just one of the finest moments.
It was a great moment.
I was a younger man back then.
We just moved right at that time.
Did you?
My husband and I lived in northern Kentucky. We were fairly newly married, just moved back because I'm from here. So this was just like
Whether those were some wonderful people back then that worked on it, and I just would
That was the definition of
call them out. It was
community,
Paula,
really.
Jerry, Dan Mecklenburg, and Greg Schneider. who-
Kudos to them because
Yeah.
Amen.
they made a dream happen.
They
Okay,
did.
thank you very much. Next speaker is Joyce Kiefer.
How you doing, Joyce?
Good evening.
Good evening.
My
Joyce.
name is Joyce Kiefer. I live at 6692 Thompson Road.
I have some information for everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
I don't know if you want information or not, but there it is.
Give it to Marty. Did you get a copy? Okay, because you might be able to help with this.
I have a problem with a fence. It was constructed at 6710 Thompson Road. It was a solid wood fence, 6 foot high, along the side of an existing chain link fence. This makes 2 fences on one line, plus the vanes or the unfinished side of that fence faced me. It did not face the owner, as it should have. These are all in violation of zoning codes 12.8.1, 12.8.2, and 12.8.5. This fence obstructed my view when pulling in and out of my driveway due to the curve of the hill, so I complained. The owner claimed it was not a fence but an arbor. Unfortunately, an arbor is a garden structure. It is not a fence. The zoning folks had a little meeting, and Jenna insisted it was a fence, not an arbor. This took some time to determine what an arbor and a fence, the difference between an arbor and a fence. I then attended a zoning meeting, and Jenna asked that I met with her after the meeting so she could discuss this with me. I did just that. Jenna advised me to use the service request, which Mr. Mills explained at a meeting recently, that feature so I could see where the complaint stood. I did so. In stating my service request, I listed these violations to the codes of Colerain Township. Shortly afterwards, the fence was reduced to 5 foot. Every other paling was removed. The main posts of this fence, which were still too tall, were not cut down. This still did not meet code. It still was too high, left 2 fences on one property line, and the main posts were never cut down, plus the fence was still improperly installed. Shortly thereafter, Chris, who is the code inspector and the code officer and inspector, sent a message that the owner had abated and now this fence met code. How can this fence meet code when there's 2 of them on one line? It's improperly installed and it's still too high. I thought maybe Chris just didn't realize the rules or something. So I thought I would meet with Chris personally, find out why he did not see that this was in violation. Phone calls to Chris were never answered. I was advised to camp out at the township if I expected to be heard. So one day I stopped at the township office and 2 people were chatting in the zoning office. One I recognized as Glenna. The man came to the window and asked if he could help me. I asked who he was, and he said, well, I am the inspector and the code officer named Chris. Fine, you are perfectly the one I want to talk to. So I told him there were still violations to the code, and he told me, well, the weather had been bad, and he didn't want to burden anybody with having to take down fences at this time of the year. And besides, he met 2 of the owner's sons. I said, fine, they have 6 sons, you have 4 more to meet. What does that have to do with my fence? All right, with that, Jenna came out, and she said he would take care of it. So I waited. More phone calls, never responses. Never. So I thought, well, maybe I should put another service request in, which I did, again stating these violations to the code. Shortly thereafter, the latest service request is number HR 180000891. This was requested on March the 20th, quite a distance from September when I was first told that this fence was going to come down. Nothing was done. Finally, on April the 18th, the service request was closed. No violations were found. I called Chris again, no response. And then I phoned Jenna's number. Jenna's phone was answered by a Marty, I don't know who Marty is, who said Jenna was on maternity leave and he would help me. I explained the situation to him. His response was he would get with Chris and get back to me. I heard nothing. So I phoned Jenna's number again. This time, Glenda Carter's message was on the voicemail. I left a message for her to please call me. No call back. But this time I'm getting pretty disgusted. I can't even get an answer from anybody. I have a fence that's in violation. I have many times tried to pull out of my driveway, totally obstructed. I cannot see. An illegal fence that gets 2 times, no violations. So anyway, I asked Dan Unger for his help after a meeting in April. It so happens that after that meeting, he said yes, but it so happened after that meeting they were going into an executive session. He said I could wait, or he would call me the next day. It was getting late, so I agreed for him to phone me the next day, which he did. He not only phoned, but came to my home, viewed the situation, even drove his car up my drive to see what I encountered as I tried to get out of my driveway. He asked Chris to give me a call. Chris called me. Guess what? This arbor-fence is now a trellis. According to the dictionary, a trellis is a lattice work, not a fence. You can't remove a couple of palings from a fence, not take it down, and it becomes a trellis. That just doesn't happen. I asked Chris how it could be a fence. A couple of boards were taken out. He said, I just told you. No, Chris didn't tell me. He told me it was a trellis. Webster's definition of a trellis is a frame of lattice work. This fence nowhere meets that description. It is a fence that is being called an arbor, a fence, and now a trellis. So my questions, why was this fence not in violation in the beginning, as it was a fence put up next to an existing fence, improperly installed, against codes 12.8.5, which clearly states fences in all districts shall be designed and installed with the most finished side out, away from the subject lot, so the most finished side faces the adjacent lots. In other words, the unfinished side is facing me, not the owner, as it should be. The code continues to state only one fence may be located on any property adjacent to any given property line. Clearly, there are 2 fences on this line, with the unfinished side facing my property. This is and has been in violation. Also, what does it take to make a structure that was deemed a fence now being called a trellis? Does Colerain Township have some special rules? Several of the pieces of the fence were shortened. Some screening now is over the top of this fence, which even further obstructs my view. You can see from the pictures that I've given everybody, the fence is too tall.
Is this the most current picture?
Pardon?
Is this the most current picture with the screening up?
Some of them were taken back when there was snow in the ground, as you can see.
But currently there's this mesh right here. That's the most current.
Yes, that's the most current
Okay,
picture.
wow.
That is what I am facing trying to get out of my driveway. Now, the only way that this fence can meet code is to be taken totally down. I have searched the internet for trellises and found pictures of trellises, none of which look like this fence. What sort of game are we playing? Last but not least, there is no permit on file for construction of this fence. Another township violation. While I hate to point fingers, why is a salary given to a code enforcement officer who blatantly ignores codes and rules when they are spelled out for him in service requests, ignores rules about getting permits, and then plays name games? Fence, arbor, trellis. It's a fence. Since this has been going on since last September, and I was promised by Jenna it would be taken care of by February, I respectfully ask, what can I expect? So when can I expect some action and this fence taken down?
Joyce, thank you for coming. We talked on the phone last week, and I asked you to come. And
Yes, you did.
I appreciate you taking the opportunity to
I
explain
appreciate
it.
you coming to my home.
Yeah,
and-
thank you
and
for that,
doing
Dan.
this.
What I would ask is that's Marty. That's the guy you're talking about.
Okay.
So glad to introduce you to. Jeff Mills is not here, and he's the administrator that works for the three of us. But I would ask you, while we're all sitting here, what is it that you would like the trustees to do, so we know?
I would like that fence taken down. That fence is totally in violation. Clearly, there's two fences on one line, you can see from the pictures. Clearly, it is too tall.
What is the mesh? What is that all about? That is
I
the
don't
mesh
know.
supposed to be an arbor or a trellis? I don't get that.
That designates as a trellis.
Marty, just by looking at it, are you able to just
you have the
tell
picture?
if that's a violation, that mesh or whatever that is?
The whole fence is in violation. There's
One
two
thing at a time.
fences on one line.
I'll get to that in a second. I'm curious about the mesh though, because it's the weirdest, it's the strangest thing. I just haven't
I
seen that.
agree. I agree
I don't
wholeheartedly.
know what that is. If there's maybe it's for grapevines or something. I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out what in the world that could.
Also, it states somewhere in the code that the owner must if they put two fences down, they must maintain between there. How can you maintain between two
Between two
fences that are
fences, yeah.
side by side? Right now, as you will see from one of the pictures, there's weeds growing constantly up in there. It's a mess.
I don't have the zoning code memorized, but I didn't know if you couldn't have two fences. To me, it almost looks
If
like
you
three
look at-
fences.
I gave you a copy of the zoning. If you look at 12.8.5 of the zoning rules, you will see those
Page.
rules.
So what I'm
Sorry, Marty. Are you good?
So Marty,
I
what are we
think it's on
doing?
now. This came in as a fence complaint. Initially, it was simply that it was a privacy fence in the front yard, and we do not allow privacy fences in the front yard. Fences are allowed in the front yard if they're 50% transparent, as in every other board being missing, and no more than 4 feet in height. So we did send notice to this owner. This owner, I will tell you, is equally angry with his neighbor for this
Whatever,
same
yeah.
thing. And they all have stories and histories. But he did comply with the order and took out every other board, cut it off at 4 feet, except for the posts.
Marty, if you look at the picture with the chain link fence and this other fence, they're not 4 feet. The other fence is still taller than 4 feet.
The chain link one's over 4 feet, you're
The
saying?
chain link is a 4-foot fence. If
Oh,
you
I
will
see the
look-
wooden thing. You can see it's taller.
If you will look at one picture, you will see very clearly that
Page 2, or picture 2.
the palings, okay, the picture has a number 2 on it.
Okay.
You will see that the palings are still above the 4-foot chain link fence.
Okay.
And you
The
will
other
see the
issue
posts.
was, we said there was a double fence. The neighbor claimed that the fence, that's the chain link fence, is actually the neighbor's fence, not his.
It's not my fence. It is not my fence.
There
The
again,
posts are
we
on her
can't
side.
That's a
resolve-
civil, that would be a civil issue, correct?
I don't know.
Trying to
how
figure
we
out
resolve
a.
that kind
Do you
of
know
thing.
whose property the fence, the chain link fence is on?
The chain link fence is between my property and her
I mean,
property.
is
But
it
whose is
right
it?
on the line, or is it a couple
That
inches?
I do not know
Okay.
for sure.
If you
because
did a
I-
survey and it's your fence, you could take it down, right?
Right,
Am I
that's what I was
crazy?
gonna say.
mean-
If he claims that's not his fence, take it out.
Yeah, I mean,
That
if
fence was up when the woman moved in there. I can tell you who put the fence up.
it,
It was put up in the late 60s, early 70s by a gentleman by the name of Charles Snell, who owned the property at that time. He
How
put the
long have
fence
you
up.
lived there? Just for the record, how long have you lived in that house? How long have you lived at that
I have
address?
lived there since 1959.
Okay,
thank you
so
for
you've
being a
been there.
taxpayer for all these years. I can appreciate that.
Well, no,
Well, it might be worth your time to invest in a survey to find out exactly whose property, because you may do a survey and find out both of them are on your property, and then you can take them down.
Well,
I would assume,
why
I'm
would
not-
I
I'm not an
want to go
attorney,
to
but-
the expense when there is a rule in Colerain Township that says you may not have two fences on one line?
Two
Whoever
fences.
owns them, you may not have 12.8.5
Two-
states that you may not
Two
have
fences
on
by
one
the
line.
same owner.
Okay.
Say
That's-
your owner has a 4-foot chain link fence and you want a privacy fence in your
So you
backyard.
could have 2 fences.
You could put 2 fences.
Gotcha.
But if you already have a fence and you want to put another fence in, you have to take your old one down first.
So really, she needs to find out if it's her fence or not.
Yeah, and we can't resolve
Yeah,
that. We
we're
have
certainly
no
not going to do a
records
survey.
going
to
back
pay for a
that
survey
far.
to figure out if it's
Now,
our fence or not.
With
Your
that
fence.
said, when the mesh, well, we closed the case after the boards were taken out and it looked like everything's okay. We actually stood in the driveway. We looked at the site distance. Obviously, the chain link fence goes a lot farther out to the road than this particular fence, and we didn't see any
Okay.
obstruction, which was our primary concern.
Yeah.
This was causing a safety issue. However, we don't regulate hedges. They could run a pine hedge as tall as they want in the
And that
front
could
yard.
block the view. Well, like the weeds. So 50% visibility. If you've got weeds all over in a fence, you're not gonna. You could have 0% visibility.
Correct.
How would that be addressed? Is that a weed? Is that a nuisance?
If they
violation?
are indeed weeds, yeah, that would be a weed.
But this sits so far back that it's not obstructing view of traffic. You're saying.
Well,
Right.
I just had Hamilton County out today because it definitely is an obstruction. And Hamilton County told me that they're going to send someone else out tomorrow because that is definitely an obstruction for me to get onto, from my driveway to get up the road.
I wish I had a picture that I could see that, because that I don't have in here. But
Well, you're welcome to
You know,
stop out
yeah,
there.
yeah, and
if you wanna
kudos
arrange
for doing
offline.
that,
Well, I
seriously.
try to respond to everybody.
I know you always do. I appreciate that. You know, if sorry.
We could certainly pursue this with the neighbor. I will tell you, it will not be very cooperative.
Yeah.
But
What do
we
you
can
think?
do
What do you
we
think her
want.
solution is, if you had to guess? Aside
Again,
from
the argument was he put the fence up, what this thing was, with the intent of growing vines on it. And arbors, trellises
Grow
are not
vines.
regulated by zoning.
gotcha.
Would you not agree that there are 2 fences on one line?
If it's an arbor, it's not a fence.
It is
If
not
it
an
is-
arbor, it's a fence.
And we do allow 2 fences on the same property
Why
line
then-
if they're under separate ownership. And it was represented to us by your
They're
neighbor.
not
that
under
that
separate
wasn't
ownership.
theirs.
Both of these fences are owned by this neighbor. 12.8.5, if you will read that zoning code, it specifically says that there are not 2 fences allowed on one property line.
But that's not the. He's saying. I think I see what you're
Only
saying.
one fence may be located on any one property adjacent to any given property line. There are 2 fences on this line. Also, the finished side of the adjacent lots and any right-of-ways, should have the correct side, that is improperly installed. Would you not agree?
If it were a fence, that would be true.
And why is it not a fence? Because
It's 2 sections, it doesn't enclose anything, and the intent was to grow vines on it. So
a trellis is a
Sorry.
frame of lattice work used as a screen. That is not a trellis.
It looks like fencing
That
material
is
to
definitely a
me.
fence, fencing material.
I guess you could make an arbor out of fencing material. I don't know. Is that unheard of?
Is it taller than 4 feet?
It's definitely looks taller. It's taller than the
It may
fence
be.
for
We
sure.
didn't actually measure it, it looked close to 4 feet to us.
Can we get on the property and measure? Is that out of our realm of?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, let's do that, because I think she's got a point on that. But the other stuff, I would recommend a survey. I know you don't want to spend the money, but it may come out to your benefit. You know, if it turns out it's.
I've got 14 acres.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
care if I have 1 foot more or less on a fence
Yeah.
line, makes no difference to me. My purpose is wanting to see when I get out on the road.
Yeah.
I do not want to have an accident on the road.
Amen.
There's traffic coming this way, there's traffic coming that way, and
That
a
I
new
can't see from the
subdivision with
picture.
220-some houses coming out there. I'm having a difficult time getting out on the road. I've lived there since 1959, and I've never had any problems before.
Yeah.
Marty-
Let's look. Okay. Perfect. Perfect.
Marty, would you please look into it and personally check the place?
Yeah.
I've been there.
Oh, you've been there?
Yeah. All of our staff has been there.
Yeah, you have to have a clear line of visibility. I have
Jeff Mills has
no.
been there. Jeff told me that he had not been out there, but,
Well, planning, Jenna has been
Okay.
there, Chris has been there, I've been there.
so the way we're going to deal with this is you're going to do,
We'll send notice to the adjacent property owner or removal of the fence.
And what's the
Is it my
timeline on
understanding
that?
that you are going to send a notice to the adjacent property owner that she must remove that fence?
We will do that.
Thank you.
Okay, and.
Thank you.
Okay, and what's the timeline on that? Sometime in the next 7 days?
7 days.
There's a holiday weekend coming up.
Yeah.
That way if Joyce calls me and asks me.
Yeah,
"Hey,
why
Joyce?"
isn't anything happening?
Hey, Joyce?
Joyce, we're still talking to you. Don't you go anywhere.
Okay, so I was just trying to establish there is a holiday weekend coming up, and Mr. Mills is not in the office tomorrow. So would this get out in the next 7 days or so?
Yes.
Okay, just so it's not going out tomorrow probably, but it will,
That's fine.
okay,
That's
just
fine.
today's Tuesday, next Tuesday is the day after Memorial Day.
Okay, if I haven't heard from somebody, whom shall I call?
Dun-dun-dun-dun.
Okay, thank you, and we'll move on to the next.
He's on. Thank you, Joyce.
Let's go right ahead and move on to the next speaker, which is Kerry Davis. Well, I'm going off the bottom of the stack, I guess. Okay. Off the bottom of the stack next would be Stephanie Wright then. Okay. Hi, Stephanie.
Hey, Stephanie.
Good evening.
Good
My
evening.
name is Stephanie Wright, and I have a few questions tonight about what's on the agenda in the resolution declaring nuisance and ordering abatement on properties. There are 20 of those this evening that the trustees are going to be signing off on the resolution. I was wondering, resolutions are usually something that are signed by the trustees, acknowledging that these are definitely violations. Is that correct, Larry?
The trustees usually sign the resolutions, yes.
So they would be signing that these 20 properties are in fault or at fault.
Right.
Okay, and how would they determine that information?
I think they can reasonably rely on their zoning department to have gone out and inspected those properties.
Okay. And then we have this CSR online where residents can go on, or anyone can go on and file a complaint about a property in Colerain Township. My question is, how does that actually work? I went through and researched all 20 of these properties against the search engine that's on our website, and they're not all listed. I was just wondering why that
I
wasn't.
think we offer an online method of requesting a property inspection, and then you can probably walk in and request
So they're
it
not
also.
all, so if you just walk in or call, it doesn't get put into the system?
Most of them get put into the system. We are actually transitioning our software, and some of them are still on the old software. The CSR is the one that's more web-friendly, and so there's still a few on that old software
When
system.
do you anticipate that transition being complete?
Probably by September, I think, is when the
Fair
final data dump is going to occur.
Okay. Well, I find that a little contradicting because some of them that are listed on the new system were filed back on 12/29 of 17. So if we're transitioning over, that would seem that the newer ones would be on there, but the older ones wouldn't be, but it's the opposite. So it's very hard for a resident to research something that might have been complained about if the system is not being implemented the way it should be. That, if someone calls and puts in a complaint or does it online, you can't check to see if there's already a complaint against it. I was just making that assumption. And out of these 20 homes, I was wondering if the trustees know how many of these are LLC owned or privately owned?
I actually filed one of those complaints against the one down at the bottom of Gaines Road at Sheed. There's a large pile of debris in the driveway. The grass is 1.5 feet tall. I looked into it to see who the owner was. The owner of that property is actually deceased, and I'm guessing that there's some type of problem in probate, and so no family members are taking care of the property, which to me, somebody needs to get out there and take care of it. And so if you look up that particular one, I made the complaint Dan Unger as trustee because somebody had mentioned it to me, and I said, fine, if you don't want to put your name on it, I will. So
Right.
I filed one of those complaints. So that was my first experience with the system. because I wanted to try it out and see how it worked since I'm a trustee, and I found it to be user-friendly, and it worked the way I expected it to, so.
So the original question was, how many of these properties are individually owned or owned by, like, Vinebrook, Freeland
There's
Investments?
probably a list, when complaints are filed, there's a list, and Marty or whoever in our department will send a notice to the owner of record.
Right, I'm just asking you guys.
I don't know how many of them are
Okay,
owned that way.
half.
I know that
Half.
half of them are.
Yes. Do you know how many of these are repeat offenders that happen every 3 to 5 months?
I don't know, no.
Probably most of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
We got a problem. We got a problem. We seem to know that we have a lot of repeat offenders. So whatever we're doing to assess the situation or rectify it isn't working. The monetary fee that these repeat offenders are being assessed doesn't seem to scare them very much. If I get an assessment on my property for $40 every 3 months, I can't even mow my own grass for $40 every 3 months. So I don't think we're going about this in a proactive, well, matter of fact, I know we're not going about it in a proactive manner. We're only reactive to situations that are brought to your awareness by residents. And I think that's a little...
I can kind of speak to it a little bit on that. So the real issue here with the repeat offenders month in and month out is the LLC, the bank-owned ones, because they don't care and they never will. You can fine them $40 or $400 or they don't care, because the reality is they're the first lien holder, and anything they sell is going to, if they, once they foreclose on it, they're going to get that money back. So we could put a $4 million lien on there and it would never matter. We're never going to see a dime of that money. The real issue here, and I agree with what you're saying, is that how do you make a bank care? Because a bank in Sioux Falls, Idaho, does not care about little Colerain Township and our foreclosure that's driving us nuts month in and month out that we have to keep cutting. How do you make a bank care? I don't know that we can ever make them care, because you would have to hold them financially accountable in order to get some sort of accountability out of them, and you'll never be able to do that. They've got more money than anything, and like I said, they're the first lien holder, so anything after that, never going to see it. Never going to see a dime.
Don't those go against the tax bill, Larry?
Yes.
So it's not a lien against the property, it actually goes on the next tax bill. So ultimately, the township will get paid for that. Are you suggesting that we should change the fees to a level that would more
I think
encourage
maybe perhaps
people?
there should be a tier 1 offenders, okay? So
Third offender, fourth offender.
correct, because we're having repeat property issues, and the cycle
That's
is
a great idea,
Let
Stephanie.
me put Marty on the spot real quick. Marty, what do you think we could do to help with some of these repeat offenders, especially the banks that just don't care?
Gosh, if you could fix that every city in the United States, I'd be grateful. To a certain extent, and by perspective, we got 25,000 households in the township, and out of that, 20 are on our list. And of the ones that we cite, the vast majority of them comply voluntarily, which we're extremely grateful. So we are dealing with the chronic ones.
Gotcha.
And so that's just the nature of what it is. I'd have to do some research, but I think the ORC limits our ability to basically assess penalties. We can assess costs, and Larry can probably help me with that.
And to change the ORC, Larry, can you speak to that?
Well, as a limited home rule township, we cannot invoke criminal penalties. It's conceivable that we could pass some kind of resolution with some graduated level of civil, liability. But I'd have to research that to make sure that that's the case.
Yeah. Okay. Good thought.
one of the problems that I'm seeing is that the township hired a contract firm out of Dayton, Ohio, to come in and take care of these blighted properties that need to have their grass mowed. Okay, here's the problem: they cut the grass. That's all they do. So now we don't have 10-foot weeds. We have a hay field with terrible edging, and they just trade one problem for the other. Would you rather look at tall grass or piles of grass? So whatever we got going on, I think we need to revisit that and up the ante on that a little bit. And
I don't mean the hay field, like she's saying. Is that just a matter of changing the terms of the contract, or asking them to to go the extra mile on something like that, or?
I'm thinking that the hayfield would somehow have to be deemed a nuisance, and if we could construe that as a nuisance.
I mean more from the standpoint of we're paying for a service,
Right.
we're getting not the best service. I mean, I don't expect them to do edging and leaf blowing and all that, but it would be nice if I kind of see where she's coming from. On that is that something that we can just pay an extra service fee to get a nicer level of service from them, or is it just we're doing the bare bones right now because it's so expensive to be general?
Maybe, Marty, I think Stephanie is right, because they may use to install lawnmower, use a bush hog. Get the, bush hog is just same, maybe on the contrary. If we tell these guys, they will use it. All install, why are you wasting your time in a lawnmower? Use a bush hog. It's faster and also cuts it really good.
Understand
More efficient way
that
of
we
doing
don't
it.
cite them as being a nuisance until it's 10 inches tall.
Yeah,
That's when we prepare these resolutions, which is 2 weeks prior to your meeting, and then it usually doesn't get cut till another week afterwards. And this time of year, it's way over 10 inches, and a normal lawnmower just will not
yeah.
deal with that. That's very unfortunate, but that's what we deal with.
Okay, well, point taken, Stephanie.
Oh, great. And then I was listening to Ms. Kiefer speak before about her issue and her property. I think maybe the thing that we're deliberating over, whether or not it's a fence, it's an arbor, it's a plum tree, it's a blue unicorn. Was there a permit supplied? Did they get a permit to build whatever it is they built?
I think she said there. I think it was said
They
that there
did
was no
not.
permit. What's the
So
penalty
then
for
what's
that?
the issue? If there's no permit, they're in violation.
If it's a trellis, it doesn't require a permit. If it is simply a landscape feature, if it's an arbor, a pergola, those things don't require zoning permits. I mean, we could do it, but I don't know if you want us spending time regulating.
Because I actually went in and asked for that information for Ms. Kiefer. I went to and asked Ms. Carter if she could research 3 properties for me. I'd like to see the zoning certificates. One I chose was my own because I knew I got a permit, so I got a copy of that. 2 was a neighbor who I knew didn't get a permit. There wasn't one. 3 was Ms. Kiefer's, and there wasn't a permit. And I asked if I'm calling it the wrong word. Should it be a trellis, a fence, an arbor? And I was never corrected on the definition or the indiscrepancies in those 3 terms. So I think perhaps
I don't know.
we need to be looking
Looks
at
like a
that.
post to me, and I don't know
Thank
what.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. The next name off the bottom of the stack is Kathy Moore.
Come on down. The price is right.
Hi, Kathy.
Good evening. I'm going to be brief, believe it or not. I had requested, when salary increases were given, I had requested a list of all of those, and I was given those. And then recently I had questioned one, and it had been provided to me, and I don't know if you were provided the list of pay increases also, but it had an employee's salary as $15,800 some dollars, and it should have been $26,716. And so I requested from Mrs. Harlow, because obviously the beginning salary or last year's salary was incorrect. So I've requested what that previous salary was before it was the $26,416, and I've not yet received that. So
I'm sorry.
Your mic on.
I'm sorry, Kathy. I
Okay,
didn't
okay.
reply to you, and
and then I just, were there any other
no,
incorrect
that
ones?
employee is part-time, or was part-time during the time period we're discussing, so that's why it didn't multiply out to, I'm trying to remember how many hours are in a 52 times 40.
2,080.
2,080, thank you. That's why it didn't multiply out correctly, because he didn't work the full-time schedule.
Okay.
So I will get that to you. I'm sorry, I have it
Okay.
for you. I just apparently didn't hit reply and send it to you.
Okay. And I have noticed, I know I questioned 2 invoices. One of them was a pair of boots for Jacob Spears, and one was for ammunition for Chief Malloy. And on both of those invoices, they had tax on them. And then I noticed when they were sent to be paid, they were approving the whole amount with the tax. It was more on the ammunition because the boots didn't get reimbursed for the whole amount. I just want to make sure that we aren't paying tax because we are tax exempt. We shouldn't be paying any tax.
You're absolutely correct, and I will make a point to remind the staff to double check that.
Okay, all right.
Thank
When
you.
you, Heather, when you're doing it, just out of curiosity, do you check for that to make sure it's something that we're tax exempt on?
Sure. Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
is it just like is it something that's like a red flag? You catch it right away, or is it possible that it wouldn't be a bad idea to have someone else double check those kinds of things? Because that could be
Well,
a decent
I mean,
amount
I
of
don't
money.
see the invoices typically myself. It's the staff that's doing it, which is why I will make sure I remind them to double check
Perfect.
that. Most places that we work with know that we're not to be charged tax, or we have,
We've
you know,
had
the tax
longstanding
exempt.
accounts or something
Right,
like
we
that.
have the
Okay.
tax exempt paperwork on file with them. But if it's a new vendor or there's, you know, that a long-time existing vendor gets a new computer system and it didn't get updated right, or there's a plenty of reasons to go through and double check that. And I'll just take a minute to remind staff to please
Thank you for that.
make a note of
Certainly
that.
don't want to pay tax if we don't have to.
Amen.
And then previously, I had questioned the redaction of Mr. Barbier's legal bills, and it was stated that that's attorney-client privilege. That is the reason. So what I would like to ask is you, the board members who are the client, do you have a problem with citizens being able to see an unredacted invoice?
I do not, except if it's an ongoing case. I understand why Larry wants to keep it redacted. And I think,
Because we're going to tell opposing counsel about it?
no, but once it's public information, opposing
Well,
counsel has every right to see it.
And you think opposing counsel is going to ask for that, just because we are?
I would think.
Okay, well, my question is the board satisfied with if the redaction includes just a name or whatever and not the whole invoice? You as the client, do you have a problem with that?
I would have to say, speaking for myself on a case-by-case basis, no, but I would have to see what it was about. And
Do you review the invoices every month?
if I've asked for anything, I've been allowed to see it. I don't,
Okay, but
I'm
do
not
you
here.
recall seeing anything in there that you think would be absolutely horrifying?
That's how I know,
if it
that's
would
how
be
I know
public?
the one case is an ongoing case. That's how I'm aware of that.
Okay, one.
With the only one that I've been interested in seeing, yes.
Okay. Well, we get a whole list of billings for the whole month. They provide one for their employee pay, plus they include one for the law firm on the contractual basis. So, Greg,
To answer you, I'd have to give it more thought. I just have to give it more thought.
why is that?
Because I have to give it more thought. I just have to give it more thought. I wish I had a better answer for you right now. I just have to give it more thought. Because there are certain examples, you know, and I think that particular one was a pretty good example of it. I just have to give it more thought. Yeah, every situation is different. I mean, something like this, honestly, I would ask for Larry's advice. I would ask for his opinion on counsel.
Well, I think we know where he stands. He doesn't want any information out there.
Yeah. I have to give more thought. Case by case, I guess, is kind of. I don't know. I don't know how you feel, Raj, but that's kind
I
of.
think it's something we ought to look into.
Okay, well, and at the sunshine law thing,
question.
they said
Fair question.
you would need to redact names or anything like that, but not the whole bill.
Not the whole bill, yeah.
Okay. And just one other quick thing. I know Chris Green got some disturbing news today, and I am very disappointed that the Chamber of Commerce thinks that they can delegate what goes on township property and how it should be done. I think his cause is a very worthy cause, and to think that the chamber gave $500 to buy beer for a Northbrook picnic but won't contribute to this worthwhile cause for military veterans, I think you ought to kick them out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Kathy.
Kathy.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure who was first, because I'm down to the last two, Jim Acton or Chris Green. Does one of you want to go first? Hi, Chris.
How you doing?
Good evening. First off, I want to say thanks for signing the development agreement and sending it over to me for the Veterans Memorial. And I want to thank Rod for showing up for the
Thank you.
benefit we had Saturday. Just to give you a little update on what's going on with the Veterans Memorial, we do have the blueprints done up. They're sent over to Frey Electric right now. They're doing the wiring diagram for free on the schematics, and they're also donating $1,000 worth of lighting, and they're donating half the labor to do the lighting when the time comes to do the Veterans Memorial. Second off, I had a meeting this morning with the Chamber of Commerce. Not sure what affiliation they have with you guys, but I'm very ticked off. They basically told me that they want me to scale the memorial down to a few statues, eliminate the benches, eliminate the flagpoles, and then move the memorial to the gateway. And if I didn't agree to that, then move it to the mall parking lot if I wanted the Chamber of Commerce and their members' support. And if I didn't move it, they would not support. I don't know what kind of pull they have to tell businesses in Colerain Township not to support this, but if it's going to be an uphill fight, I'll put my hiking boots on and I'm going up the hill.
I would
will
assume
do
they've got as much authority to tell you that as you have authority to tell them that. You know, you're two separate entities. In a perfect world, we would like to see everyone get along. You know, that's networking. That's what, especially the chamber. That's what it's all about, networking. So I was a little bit surprised to hear that too. I don't know what they're. I don't know. I mean, I don't know where that came from. That's what I'm more curious about.
They sent me an email last week, wanted to have a meeting with me.
Oh, that was
we had
nice
the meeting this morning. It was the president, Deborah Stonehill, and Jennifer from Clippert was there.
I don't know.
And I mean, if that's the way the chamber operates, I don't want no part of it, and I'll cancel my membership there.
What was her, what do you think was her reasoning?
She said, as a business point of view, they needed to be on Colerain Avenue to drive people to businesses. The memorial is not a business. The memorial does not need to be on Colerain Avenue. There's too much traffic, cops, police, fire, going up and down the street with sirens, rumpke trucks. How is somebody supposed to sit there and reflect, reminisce, think about, while they're visiting the memorial? That's the whole purpose of it. Peace and tranquility. You don't have that anywhere on Colerain Avenue.
Yeah. I see the argument, which is why the plans were changed from Colerain Park. That was perfectly peaceful and tranquil, but no one would see it because it's tucked away.
And that's why.
And I think Springdale Road location, or right here next to us, is probably a compromise between the Gateway Memorial, which is obviously very busy, great visibility, not very tranquil. I don't know that I've ever heard someone call Colerain Avenue tranquil, but certainly visible, no doubt about it. Springdale.
I think it's more safety here.
Yeah,
Safety, you don't want kids. Colerain Avenue is so busy. I think the place we have now.
I love the fact.
The children.
I love the fact that it's. Sorry, Raj, were you done? My bad. Sorry about that.
Right,
I couldn't tell. I was trying to get. I love the fact that we already have a Gateway Memorial. I love that. I love that there's already infrastructure in place. There's already electric, stuff that you wouldn't have to pay for. I don't like Raj was saying, like how busy it is from the tranquility aspect of it and the sheer size of it. I mean, what you're talking about doing is massive, and we couldn't fit a tank at the corner of Colerain and Springdale. And I'm not sure I want a tank at the corner of Colerain and Springdale. It might not be the best location for a tank. That kind of thing.
We're getting a tank and a helicopter.
And a helicopter. You see what I mean? So,
Yes.
But what I would say, and I would encourage, if you guys haven't had a chance to walk outside here, we have a little bit of a memorial out here. I would encourage utilizing that and integrating that into either that or the gateway, one or the other maybe. So that way we don't have three different areas. You know what I mean? So can't integrate it? No. Can't integrate it? It's just too heavy or just too expensive or fragile? Can't move. Oh, it's in a trust or something? Oh, I didn't know that. That's good.
I don't know, if something happened to where the town or the Chamber of Commerce was approached by somebody and wanted this changed or something, but we have the resolution, and we also have the development agreement.
And that's,
Yeah, that hasn't changed.
that hasn't changed. They are an independent organization, and we had them in here maybe 3 months ago to explain what their status was, and since then, they've gone on their way, and I can't answer as to what the relationship is with why they want to make those changes.
I can personally tell you, I've not talked to them about any of this. I'm assuming you
No, I
guys.
have not either. I've
Township,
not-
you spoke to.
I've
yeah,
not heard
so it's
from
not,
them
It
in the-
certainly doesn't come from us. I would
No.
love to see, like I said, in a perfect world, everybody get along. Because the greater good is the community. That's.
Yeah,
should go
that's
without
not
saying.
that's not going to happen. I just wanted to let you guys know what was going on with the
Thank you
chamber.
for letting us know that. I haven't heard from them
Yeah.
since they were here at the meeting last time.
And
so.
I mean, they did deny me for. I sent out a donation request for them, and they did deny that. And then I got the email that wanted to talk about it. And then if we move it, they'll sponsor it. If we put it in the business area.
Well, if you want to consider moving it, I'll certainly be open to considering moving it. If you want to keep it where you're at, I'll still support you where you're at.
I mean, people's already donated money for it to go where it's at.
Okay,
Do you
well,
have an update on the tank and the helicopter? Because last we had spoke, you were I don't remember. Sorry to put you on the spot. I'm just curious.
No, I'm still in contact with them, and when we get closer to it, I'm supposed to give them a delivery date.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I think that's the coolest. I love it. Yeah, I love when you drive up Harrison on in Green Township, when you see their tank, it just stands out. It's an instantly recognizable memorial. So I think that was a great idea.
But
thank you, and thank you for giving us an update.
all right.
Jim Acton?
Just a couple of points here. Ms. Kiefer, wherever you're at, I hope you're still here.
She's there.
You're getting the runaround that we got when Goodyear came up here and put their fence up and moved everything back into that, against that guy's stone chain link fence. Come up here, dear. Come up here.
Oh, that's fine, Jim. He said he thought you were getting the runaround. Okay, well, you haven't gotten that from me.
Trustees that sat here, and Mr. Ensko, in his defense, he voted against it. But when Goodyear put their building up there, they inherited another 15 feet of property that does not belong to them. And the fence that's facing the property owner, that's where the shrubberies are supposed to be. They're on the opposite side, so this guy's got to look at a blank fence all the time. And he's got a chain link fence up too. So just lots of luck. That was prior to Marty's coming here also.
Fair enough. Thank you, Marty.
Who owns the property, Marty, at Pool Road at the entrance of Colerain Avenue? As you pull in where the house was there a couple years ago, then you weren't here, but they went through the battle of taking care of it and getting it tore down. And
You're talking about along the entry drive to Colerain High School?
yes, sir, that property on the other side of the fence, sir.
Yeah. As far as I know, it's still in private hands. We received, we received a grant, demolished the house, and placed an assessment on that property.
Who's responsible for cutting the grass there now that it's 18, 20 inches high?
Probably going to be us this year.
Okay, because I'm just curious.
Yeah, until title transfers, that's probably the way it's going to be.
That's what I was going to ask you. What are we waiting for the title transfer?
Once the assessments and taxes get in arrears enough, the county prosecutor will institute foreclosure for back taxes.
So that's what we're waiting on.
Yeah.
I was driving by that earlier wondering that. Thank you.
Yes. Marty, as you and I spoke earlier, I used to live at the corner of Jack Way and Peacock Drive years ago when I first came to Colerain Township. Beautiful neighborhood. We had some beautiful people there, kept their lawns and everything beautiful. The guy lived next door to me had zoysia grass. I don't know if you know much about zoysia grass, but it's beautiful when it's growing. When the frost comes, it's dead. and it turns brown, white, whatever color you want to call it. His daughter took over the house, and that's when the troubles started. I'd since moved, but at 2670 Jackway Court and 2690 Jackway Court, there are numerous cars, trucks on the line 24 hours a day. I happened to drive down there this afternoon because I forgot to write down the addresses, but you can see the ruts and all in the grass at 2690 and 2670. But 2670, there's a car parked there now, and it's been there, I don't know, for a couple of weeks, I guess. Zoning department, you know, you always ask for us residents to let you know what's going on. Well, I'm letting you know what's going on. If you need a spare driver to go around to help Tom and you, I charge gas mileage, $11 an hour. I'll cover the whole township for you, and I'll tell you what's going on around here, because I got free time. The only other comment that I want to make, Chris, you and I spoke briefly out front, but Chamber of Commerce, I would raise the rent that they're paying at least to $500, if not $1,000. Stick it to them, because they're sticking it to us citizens. If it was me, I'd say, tell everybody on Facebook, do not shop anybody that belongs to the chamber. I'm sure they came to the township and asked for money for their big benefit for Hep Cronin. Not Hep, but his son.
The township gave them nothing, that we have not given them, this board has not funded them at all. That's why we had them here 3 months ago to explain the relationship, and this board has not given them anything, or any other such group.
Because I've asked them, Deborah, on 3 occasions to come to speak to them about beautification of Colerain Avenue in Springdale and Galbraith. I've got to join them. I'm not a business owner. I could care less. But in my book, if that's the way they want to be, I'm not going to support them. And to be honest with you, there's very few places here in Colerain that I support. I support the independent restaurants, and that's about it. Beyond that, forget it. And I think you guys should put the word out to them. Join the group, or we don't want to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
And then that brings Kerry Davis back up. Did you want to speak, so you'll pass? Okay, we will move on to the next, that's all the requests that I had. So we will move on to the next portion of the meeting at 8:10 p.m., which is new business. Marty?
We're bringing to you a resolution declaring nuisance and ordering abatement for uncontrolled vegetation, refuse, and debris that were reported at the following properties: 9952 Capstan, 9173 Coogan, 9810 Green River, 9892 Green River, 9669 Laura Linda, 1071 Manistee, 10262 Menominee, 2524 Niagara, 2659 Niagara, 10217 October, 2938 Overdale, 1038 Regency, 3149 Rock Acres, 2404 Shone, 3160 Sovereign, 3628 Sweetwood, 7175 Sheed, 2947 Winden, 8750 Venus, and 8762 Venus.
And so the motion is to order abatement of those properties.
The order is to order abatement and give staff permission to process assessments for the costs against the properties.
And I would go ahead and motion for that.
Actually, what you are doing is approving a resolution declaring nuisance and ordering abatement.
A motion to approve the resolution.
I'll still second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Heather, please call for a vote.
Mr. Insco?
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Unger?
Aye. The motion.
Here is the resolution for your signature.
And,
On the new business, I'd like to add, tell the citizens, I serve in the Hamilton County Solid Waste Board. We appointed a deputy sheriff just to enforce all the tire discards, anything in the county, includes Colerain Township. All he had to call the communication center. This mostly environmental office. They appointed, and the EPA will paying for the full salary for the deputy sheriff, full-time job.
For tires?
Yeah, if you anybody anywhere you see driveway in the front of the house, tires, anything piled up, discarded, you can call the communication center or the police, Hamilton County Sheriff's Department headquarters. They will dispatch the deputy sheriff, they'll cite them, and they'll go directly to the court, Hamilton County Court.
that would be the non-emergency phone number, which is what, 825-2260?
825-2260, yeah. We appointed last Wednesday, full-time officer, deputy sheriff, will be patrolling all over the county, and we initiated this project to one of the environmental protections for our community.
Raj, can I ask you, is that a residential or business too?
Residential,
Not
business too.
Oh, business too. Okay,
Business too.
I didn't catch that.
It's the old non-emergency phone number before 911 was invented, and it's 825-2260. And I would, unless you have a true emergency, I would always, here in Colerain, it's 321 cops. In the county, the old number was 825-2260, and I think that line is still active. Just tell them Raj told you.
Yeah.
You say Raj, they'll pick up the phone on the first
they'll
ring.
be-
It's a full-time officer. She'll be driving the sheriff's car. She'll be fully uniformed, law enforcement, and give a citation. Directly go to the municipal court.
Okay. Thank you, Raj. Our next item is another session of an executive session, and so we got out here and got the meeting started on time. We still had a little bit more business to take care of, so I'd ask Larry to read a resolution.
I recommend a motion that the board go into executive session in accordance with Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22G8 to consider confidential information relating to specific business strategy and to discuss negotiations with other political subdivisions respecting requests for economic development assistance.
Make the motion.
And I'll second it. It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion? I will only say that after that, there will be no decisions made, and we will just come back to adjourn the meeting. You're welcome to hang out, but there'll be no business after we come back. So, Heather, would you please call for a vote?
Mr. Insco?
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Runder?
Aye. And I want to thank you all for coming, and I appreciate the opportunity to hear from everyone.
Likewise.
Thank you very much.